Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is time for a Wednesday interview. Joining me today on the podcast is Jim Borger, co-founder and CEO of Web3Sense. If that name sounds familiar, it's because Web3Sense is a sponsor of Overpriced JPEGs. They have come on for a longer-term partnership, sponsoring the podcast, sponsoring our Overpriced JPEGs tour. So I do want to shout that out, as I guess you could argue it's a conflict of interest here, but Jim is a partner of ours on the sponsorship side because we also genuinely believe in Web3Sense. We actually did a lot of diligence when Web3Sense reached out interested in sponsoring the show, talking to some of their partners and backers and various folks to make sure we felt like this was an interesting product, but most importantly, an honorable team. So obviously a lot of rug pulls in this world, and Web3Sense is certainly not one of them. They're also not selling an NFT, so it really doesn't even apply. Anyway, Web3Sense is an analytics platform that gives you all sorts of insights into on-chain activity to various NFT communities. I think they make a really compelling case for why this is an important thing to have as something in this space as the space continues to grow. So you'll hear Jim make that case today. We also dive into some interesting facts about some of these leading NFT communities, whether it's Bored Apes, Pudgies, VFriends. We dive into the data on some of these projects and get some interesting insights. So I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. I'm so grateful to Jim and his Web3Sense team for everything they've done. There's like joys to work with too. So, you know, I'm really fans of them across the board. Other announcements before we dive into this episode, we have our upcoming event with Kevin Rose and Frank DeGods happening on Tuesday, May 16th. I know there's been some confusion because I think there were some other dates floating around, which is my fault. We had to change up the dates a little bit. So Tuesday, May 16th, 6 p.m. We kick off, 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific time at the Bright Moments Gallery, which is in Venice. Thank you to Bright Moments for lending us their space. Also want to thank Proof, who is coming in and doing our AV for that and coming in as a sponsor. So that's going to be a good event, May 16th at 6 p.m. I think that does it. So with that, I'm going to hand things off to our sponsors, including Web3Sense, and then we will be on to my conversation with Jim Borger of Web3Sense. Y'all know, I think one of the most powerful use cases for NFTs are loyalty programs, which is why I'm so excited about our latest partner, GALXE. That's GALXE. GALXE is a leading platform for building a Web3 community. It is a no-code, plug-and-play solution to create task-based campaigns and loyalty programs. With over 67 million users, GALXE has worked with folks like Optimism, Polygon, Arbitrum, and more than 2,100 other partners with reward-based loyalty programs of their own. And I'm especially excited to announce their latest product offering, GALXE Mint List. Mint List enables NFT projects to issue allow lists based on different user profiles. It's free to use, and projects can then take advantage of GALXE's other offerings, like Task and Quest, which incentivize audience growth and user retention in the long term. Go beyond the mint and keep using GALXE's infrastructure to reward users through on and off-chain actions. GALXE's goal is to help projects grow in an authentic way and help them retain their users and communities over the long haul. And as a user, you can start contributing to your favorite Web3 communities today, joining allow lists through Mint List and earning rewards, NFTs, oats, tokens, and points. Go to galaxy.com right now, that's GALXE.com right now, or click the link in the show notes to get started. Your Web3 community is waiting. I am so excited to announce that this year, Overpriced JPEGs has partnered with OPENSEA, the world's leading NFT marketplace, built for everyone, creators, collectors, noobs, and experts alike. I'm an OPENSEA user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the ecosystem, supporting 8 chains and 8 global languages. I trust the systems they've put in place to keep the space safe, like copyright protection, malicious URL detection and removal, robust verification, and more. It's why they are the place to buy, sell, and create NFTs. That's right. You know OPENSEA, you use OPENSEA, but did you know that OPENSEA now has drops? New exclusive projects launch every week from top projects and creators, and you can check them out now using the link in the show notes. They also recently introduced self-serve drops, which is in beta, and allows creators to launch their projects right on OPENSEA. This drops product gives creators access to tools like rich storytelling drop pages, multi-chain support, and drop mechanic customization. The full launch for self-serve drops is coming this spring. So check out the upcoming drops on OPENSEA right now using the link in the show notes and own what moves you. You'll also be supporting the show in the process. Jim Borger, welcome to Overpriced JPEGs.
Thank you, Carly. Good to be here.
So fun to have you on. You and I talk somewhat regularly, and it's always fun when a friend in real life becomes my work job.
Yes.
Work job? You know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that I think is so interesting about Web3Sense is the fact that y'all, I don't know how to phrase this, but we're incubated within Notre Dame and really came out of Notre Dame University.
Yes.
So let's just go back. Like, how did this come to be? Is there like some student sitting in comp sci class being like, I'm bored, I love NFTs, I'm going to make something? Or like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so no, it's a great question. And so it kind of starts with my partner, Notre. Okay, so he comes from Poland about 15 years ago, works at LSU for a couple of years, then gets recruited to Notre Dame to set up the Center for Research Computing. And Yark is a computer genius, but he is also one of the warmest and most caring guys you ever want to meet. He's the kind of person you want your kids to grow up to be. He's like godfather to a bunch of people's kids. He's that kind of person. So he's running the Center for Research Computing. He's doing all kinds of cool projects around like cybersecurity, drone manufacturing, drone simulation. Like he'll get asked to simulate a drone attack, which is terrifying, but it needs to be done to see like, okay, what would a city or country do if that happened? All kinds of cool things. And he got really into all things blockchain with some partners of his many years ago. But they built he and his partners Andre and Ian built this really robust technology that can crawl any blockchain, public-private hybrid, extract the data, metadata, semantic data, and help you make sense of what's going on.
So hold on. How did that idea first come to be? The like trawling for all this data? Like, was that something that did he think this up one day?
Yeah,
like this would be worthwhile to have out there?
And like basically we like the big vision for Web3Sense, right? We believe blockchain technology improves just about everything that we're doing already as the human race. And that, there are long-term theses like we need insights and analytics to make this grow more quickly and be more user-friendly. Blockchains are amazing, but they are hellish to try to analyze and interrogate for insights. They are, right? Like you can go on Etherscan and get a lot done there if you know what you're doing. But in aggregate, it can be very hard sometimes to just scan what's going on in a community or in a supply chain or things like that.
Is that primarily or because of anonymity, or is the anonymity just a tertiary, secondary?
I think it's just the way like you have all these wallet addresses, all these transactions, all these blocks, you've got the mempool, you've got the resolve blocks, you've got all these different things that are, not necessarily in a user-friendly format or structure, or architecture to be, to deliver.
Yeah, there's no like nice front end across Etherscan, essentially. I mean, you've got various different sort of that.
By the way, I think Etherscan's amazing. Yeah. But it's like,
But again, your average person's not like trawling that to understand. Like we're like, oh, provenance, that's what's amazing about NFTs. It's like, how many people are really going to identify the provenance via something like Etherscan?
Yeah.
Okay, but let's go back. So Yarek is at Notre Dame, is a big just blockchain fan, saying, wow, we're going to need insights in this world.
Yeah, and at this point, he has a blockchain team set up. They're doing all kinds of cool things in addition to this technology. But yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And then,
so where do you come in?
Yeah, I come in last year.
So you're a Notre Dame alum.
I'm a Notre Dame alum and a proud one, but I was kind of disconnected from the school. And I started talking to a guy from the development office who was, covering me. And I was kind of friendly with him.
I want your money.
Yeah. Money is cool. That's the main reason he's calling me. But he also, first of all, he's an awesome individual in his own right, Matt. But he's like, hey, look, I can plug you back into the school in any which way that you'd like. And I said, good, because I'm spending any free time that I have. I got 3 little kids and I got, busy life like anybody else, but I'm spending all my free time, exploring blockchain technology. I've kind of been in it since 2016 and it's amazing, right? But I want to do it for a living. And if I can, or at least tap into all the cool things going on at the school. And I got introduced to Yark. We hit it off. He's like, look, I'm busy with all my duties at Notre Dame, but we would love you to be CEO, co-founder. Let's get this company going. Let's commercialize this and take it to market.
And so what was it what drew you to this? Like, what was the, oh my gosh, yes, no brainer. I'm going to go dedicate the next chapter of my life to this because it's that important. Like what struck you?
Just that central thesis that blockchain technology improves just about everything we're doing. And it's cool and fun, right? And it's about so much more than just trading. I think that the whole trading element contributes to so much of like what people don't necessarily like about a certain pockets of the blockchain or NFT communities, right? First of all, I think we have to step back and just be grateful for the Satoshi white paper every now and again and remind ourselves that and I asked Yark the other day, like we were out having a beer. I'm like, what happens if Satoshi, whether it's he, her, group of people, whatever, what if that paper doesn't come about? Is this automatically going to happen anyway? He doesn't necessarily think so.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I try to always stay grateful for blockchain.
We're such nerds.
Yeah, well, I know, but but I'm like, that's what I want to do. Like when I wake up, I now love working again. It's like, it's cool, right? I think you do too. It comes through in your work. So
I'm really lucky.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm so interested in this dynamic where you have so Notre Dame owns part of Web3Sense or has equity in
Correct.
Can we speak in specific numbers?
Yeah, they have a 5% stake in our company.
So how does that come to be? How does that negotiation go?
Yeah.
Is this like something that's standardized of if something is built by a researcher there? Like
Sure.
talk me through that process.
There's a couple different, I think, like blueprints for how this works at the school. At least I saw two different kind of options, right? And it's not a given that this always goes well, right, at various universities.
Yes, it seems like it get very dicey.
It could be very dicey if you don't have good collaboration or aligned interests. So, yeah, they want to see us succeed. They own a piece of the company. Then you have the technology. The technology was developed at the school, but we have an exclusive license for it that presumably, based on what we've seen the school do in other companies that they've helped get off the ground, there is a transfer of the technology ownership upon you hitting a certain, round of financing.
And is that like baked into the contract?
Yeah,
that
we
happens?
have an agreement. Yeah.
Okay, so that it's like if you hit a certain amount of funding, it sounds like at that point, the technology. It's not even an exclusive license. It's just like great.
They're psyched. They've already made they're already making money.
They're already in the green on paper, at least.
Yeah,
got it. So but how does this even start? So is that like in Yarik's contract that anything that he works on or builds, like in the way that if you build something while you're at Google, they actually technically own it? Is that how they even get a hold of it in the first place, let's call it?
Yeah. I mean, I think any university employee, certainly any research professor that comes up with something and builds it at the school, yes.
Okay.
You can't just like sneak off and like, I'm going to give my 2 weeks and then go do that. Right?
Yeah.
Not that he would, but yeah, you can.
So how does the 5%?
Rightfully so, right? Like the school has to have some, reason to keep funding this, and go ahead.
So how do you land at the 5% number? Again, is that standard for
I think it was
projects
pretty standard.
like this?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then
which is like, it's enough to be, I think, pretty meaningful.
Yeah.
But it's not like they took a huge, pound of flesh.
And then y'all are in the middle of a fundraise, just recently closed a raise?
Yeah, we've closed our, initial round.
Does that mean you have the tech yet?
We have we've got like a really, I think, neat platform, but it's always improving. Like each week.
But I mean, in this deal with Notre Dame, like you said, at a certain amount of funding.
Oh no! This will be like, I think Series A is one.
Okay, and you're in sort of like a seed round.
Mm-hmm.
You just closed a seed round, and in a Series
pre-seed, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, we are, lean and mean, but given that we have an amazing amount of talent, it's high quality. It's not huge quantity, but the quality of the team is such that we're getting tremendous leverage out of, first of all, what Yark and the gang had already built. Mm-hmm. And we just have an amazing data science team, great engineers. We've got, guy Dave, who's got tremendous experience in helping set up tons and tons of companies over, his career. So I think we have like a really stacked team.
Mm-hmm. Your team are also sweethearts.
Oh, well, thank you. So is your team. You make me blush. Yes, I can't believe, make me cry. I can't believe how cool my team is.
Oh, I'm going to cry. I cry at everything, though.
This is what happens when you have kids. I used to never cry. And my wife was like, I've only seen you cry when the Phillies won the World Series. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a.
No, I'm very lucky.
Yeah, no, they really are such a just like a very sweet group. Yeah. I'm like, man, we got to get ourselves to the Midwest, Like,
I know, right?
Well, is South Bend the Midwest? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
For sure. Like heart of Midwest.
Northern Indiana.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reveal how little I know about geography.
The team is actually more than 50% immigrants. We've got Poland represented, Ireland, Russia, Brazil.
Cool. Yeah, it's so fun getting on calls with y'all because you've got, you've got a badass woman who's doing a lot of the data, the data behind the scenes, and you get on with her, and she's just like, she'll rattle off all these just like really fast statistically what's happening from a data perspective in the background, and I'm sitting there being like, yeah, cool, I'll take your word for that. Like, I don't understand.
I spend a lot of time pretending I understand stuff that she says. Yes.
Yeah.
And then we got another woman who's like our social media guru who's like just crunches all kinds of numbers. She's big into gaming. She runs guilds and stuff. She's amazing. Is that so? When you say social media guru, because we're going to get into this in just a second, but is she running your social media, or as in she's pulling insights from social media
for the data you guys are
So
pulling?
much of the value that we're trying to create for our clients is connecting what's going on social media channels with what's going on chain, which is easier said than done.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the specifics of what you guys do.
Yeah.
And then I want to close with a little bit like the big vision and also, I guess, the business model here as well, right? You just mentioned clients. Like, how do people work with you if they're interested?
Yeah.
So, but let's start with this. Okay, so y'all are trawling all sorts of data all the time on chain. I'm curious what sorts of insights you have that may surprise people. And I thought we'd start with community loyalty. And you all have some insights into really what is the most loyal community. And we should say you're looking at Ethereum and Polygon. You're adding additional chains, but so nobody in the freaking Polkadot ecosystem come at me for your super loyal whatever the heck, and maybe start by explaining to folks, like, how do you measure? I'm saying the most loyal community, but what are you really measuring when you say that?
Okay, well, we're starting with hold time. Okay, so founders, creators, everybody pretty much agrees on if your hold time is going up, people are getting more loyal, more enthusiastic about your vision, about the long-term prospects of your community, and likewise, if it's going down, less so. So you start there, but you don't just look at average or mean, which my data science team is adamant about. Like, that is not an effective metric for virtually anything. But you start there, you look at the whole time across take out the outliers, and you just take a look at the wallet age, the collection age, all the things going on there. And then you look at wallet personas too. Like, are these believers or holders, people that are in it to win it for the long haul, in it for the vision?
And that's based on if they've held for 2 months versus...
Yeah, so we actually, for every wallet on chains, we have metrics around their dominant persona collection by collection. So whether or not they're a holder, which is just what it sounds like. Believers would be somebody who buys into a mint or shortly thereafter and continues to accumulate more tokens, more assets in time.
We say a holder is just what it sounds like, but this is time bounded. Like, if I hold something, at what point in my hold cycle do I get considered a holder? As long as I'm holding it, am I a holder?
Yeah, it's good. Like, if you bought it and then you never sold it, fine, you're a holder. If you're largely, I know I'm going to talk kind of vague, and my data science team is a lot more exact about this, but you don't get penalized if you buy 10 of them and then you sell 1 or 2 here or there because you got to pay the rent or whatever, and then you get back in. You're dominant. Like, you tend to buy and hold for a meaningful duration of time.
Yeah,
and that's all baked in of all the formulas in terms of like what exactly does it mean to be a long time in a particular community. That has to do with the collection age or like when a second or third token minted and things like that. So
I'm going to ask you who's the most loyal community. But before I do that, I do want to, I think you pointed at something that was interesting here, which is, I know you talk to founders and blue chip founders and companies and brands and things. Like, it's the trending info on that it sounds like they almost find most interesting. That it sounded like you were saying. Like,
trend
where is it trending? Like, are we moving down or up in terms of how many people are holding long term? Very interesting.
So you look at things over time, you visualize it in an easily understood way and format, and then you can look and be like, oh, good. Like, the people that have held on to tokens in my collection, my community, it's trending in the right direction. There's fewer people bailing. There's a lot of cool ways to look at it, but the combination of hold time, personas, and a couple other things is what we use.
Okay, so I know the answer to this, so I'm not even going to feign surprise. I'm not going to pretend that I have to act surprised. What is the most loyal NFT community?
VFriends.
Happy Hermit Crab holder, Minter holder, and Sufficient Shrimp, as people know. That doesn't surprise me.
No.
As somebody who minted and then has held them, and how many people are like just big Gary fans who are like, sure, I'll buy anything Gary does, and then
in his vision, they tap it. They are totally aligned with his vision. They're enthused about being part of his community, his team's community, and also he's got utility. Like, you get to go to VCon for 3 years, right? He had like a long-term vision there, and you see it not only in the numbers but in the network diagram where you've got all these people who have minted and then just held or put it in their cold storage wallet.
Do we have a percent of like what percent of the VFriends community are, let's call it, holders?
We do. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah. Okay.
Holders, believers, flippers, traders, and then we call them stack and sell.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're adding more personas as our clients kind of define them. Stack and sell is like if you mint a bunch or collect a bunch and then you just sell them over time. Like, you're not that committed to the community. You're selling when prices go up.
As they go up, you're
You're
that makes
seeking
sense.
alpha, I guess.
Yep. Okay, makes sense. Well, there were some others that surprised me in terms of very loyal communities. I'll shout out Doodles as one that I think in what you sent me was number 3 in terms of
They're
loyalty.
way up there. Yeah.
The third, like most loyal, again, this is across all Ethereum and Polygon. I mean, there's, I'm sure you guys have to weed out really.
And to be fair, we're looking at peers, right? Like, so we're not, there might be some insanely loyal community further downstream. We're kind of looking at some of the major collections in their peer group. We can do anything, but we're looking at peer group.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, like Doodles way up there.
What's so interesting to me about Doodles, and we actually use this data because we work with you guys when we do our, we work with you in a couple different ways on the newsletter, but our like NFT index, when we rank, do our top 10 list, right? Which we've been doing monthly.
Which, by the way, is an amazing newsletter. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for?
That's why.
No, it is. No, but I mean, it is. It's awesome. And it's like you put a lot of hard work.
We're putting a lot of work into it. We're trying to figure it out. That's a separate conversation. You can interview me sometime. Okay, so I pointed that out because I thought it was really striking. The first newsletter we put out, and we have this council of really amazing traders and players in the ecosystem, not just traders, participants, et cetera, who rank these projects as well. And then we take their feedback and incorporate it in. And people were pretty down on Doodles, right? I think Doodles is trending back up in terms of sentiment and community sentiment around them, but it was pretty low at one point. But what was so striking to me was the feeling around Doodles was that, like the sentiment is so low and everybody doesn't like them. And yet even then, the percent holders was very high. And that's the kind of data that I think is so interesting because I always try to be skeptical of just the crypto Twitter sentiment. Like just because everybody on crypto Twitter is dunking on something, I think then the numbers are a better indication of what's really happening. So for as much FUD as there's been around Doodles, there's a core group there that are just deep believers. Though I know that's one of your personas. I don't mean believers in the persona sense.
You're absolutely right.
in the whatever.
Absolutely right.
Sense.
And that's why the devil's in the details, right? Like and especially when you think about like people who get on social media to vent. I mean, they're going to be loud, right? And then people are going to be like, "Oh my God, like are they representation? Are they reflective of the broader community?" And it's not necessarily the case.
So Doodles is number 3. VeeFriends is number 1.
Pudgies.
Who's number 2?
Yeah, Pudgies. Like not that far behind VeeFriends. We know they've been through a lot, and we've looked at like I think it was April 2nd.
Is around when Luca took over.
Yeah, when Luca took over, and we've done an analysis like pre and post.
So what does that? Do you have that information off the top of your head?
Not that like it's a longer story. Like we actually have like all these different wallets mapped out, and and looking at their activity and like who came back, like who left and then came back, who's new. It's really fascinating to look at. If you're a geek, like we are, but it's really interesting. So like for all the people that bailed or dunked on or said, "Hey, I'm out of here," a lot of people didn't. And so I think. It is fascinating to look at. And then you've got you do have some communities that I think are a little bit victims of their own success with regard to the amount of money you can make trading them.
Right.
We try
to factor Bored Apes have terrible loyalty, but it's not like if you look, we know that there's a tremendous amount of loyalty in the Bored Ape community and people love Yuga, but how has Blur airdrop farming?
I know. So that's our next major thought leadership piece is looking at the pre and post because there was so much wash trading, right?
Yep.
And
so are you guys having to clean the data of that?
We can see when wallets are just trading back and forth with one another pretty much. Yeah.
And so that's why that's sort of part of the story of why averages aren't helpful because you need to take something like that and basically eliminate it from the data.
That's right.
Because that's just you're not going to get an accurate representation of anything if you're looking at that. So even with that accounted for, Bored Apes still have much higher trader volume versus holder volume. Yeah,
yes.
I mean, if you can liquidate to buy a mortgage, it is just an incentive to sell in a way that, you say, a lot of folks didn't sell amidst all of the Pudgy drama. And I can relate to that, Joe, in terms of, I bought a cool cat egg or whatever, an ETH, and I'm sure, I don't even know what it's worth now, but it's worth nothing. But it wasn't even worth selling to me. It's I might as well just hold this on the off chance that it pops again rather than sell it for 0.01 ETH or whatever it would be worth, at this point. And so that makes sense to some extent on the other hand, whereas a Bored Ape, you're well, even if it's down, if it's still 60 ETH, right?
Yeah, and I think when you talk about Yuga token holders, you're talking about a sophisticated bunch, right? People that are pretty savvy. And they're the types of folks that might be hey, there's an opportunity cost to holding on to NFTs right now because ETH is maybe going to rip. When ETH rips, NFT prices can be flat or down, right, on typically. So they might just be, riding the ETH rip, and then they'll get back in. Yeah. So you got to account for that too, I think.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about Yuga, so I think one of the other things that y'all pull in the data is like a kind of a staple of what you do is, and we were talking about this earlier, TVC or TCV. Yeah. I like TCV. Right. I think the actual term y'all use is TVC, but the idea is total community value or total value of a community.
Right.
Either way you want to phrase it. And this is you all looking.
We might like your way better. I have to take it back to the gang.
This is why you work with me. Just saying.
It is.
This is my contribution. Right. You can't do any of the data. But the idea there is how much, well, you can look at a bunch of things, right? Like how much liquid ETH is in the hands of this community. For example, how much value in NFTs does this community hold?
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. So we're looking at, the collection itself, easy. NFTs that are also in their wallets, we're looking at that, and then liquid ETH. So we're looking at, when you put all that together, you also have to, for a community like we do for the newsletter, you have to dedupe, right? You can't double, triple, quadruple count people in each collection. Yuga's got a number of different major collections. You have to dedupe, then you look at it, and then you assess, okay, what is and this is kind of putting Web3 concepts into Web2 lexicon is like, okay, like you think about brands, like they've always wanted to know what's the buying power, the value of my audience, and what's their behavior like, and who are the influencers, kind of the three main questions. This is the buying power or value of a community in Web3.
That's, I want to talk about some of the implications of this, but I first want to, I think on the deduping point, deduping in a couple ways, right? Because you just described, okay, if we want to know the value of the Yuga ecosystem, well, I mean, hell, they've got punks, Meebits, 10KTF. So you have to look and say, okay, we can't count a wallet twice just because it holds a Meebit and a punk. So that's a deduping that you're going to do. Right. But you're also having to dedupe, you do your best to like, plenty of especially sophisticated traders will have multiple wallets where they're really one person. Well, I guess no, though they would have if they have ETH in one, still add it up. Okay, I'm wrong.
Like they can't duplicate their assets, but sure. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
There's something with that. I feel like I've worked with your team on. They're like, well, it's complicated because you have to make sure we're not like double counting wallets. But I guess it's just that one. So forget me. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No. Yeah. No, it's it is fascinating and it's staggering how much. I mean, it's stating the obvious to say Yuga's the king or the biggest of the baddest of the bunch. But it's the magnitude
of it is crazy.
Yeah.
So what is the TCV, this total community value of Yuga?
It's over $4.5 billion.
There's over $4.5 billion worth of assets and ETH sitting in the wallets of folks who
hold. And the liquid ETH is $1.1 billion.
$1.1 billion.
Of liquid ETH among Yuga holders, right?
Like that could.
And I looked, like there's a lot of people who, have liquidated some stuff lately. So their liquidity has actually gone up. Even though the NFT market's down. In the terms, like the buying power of the Yuga community has actually gone up.
Insane.
Actually, since last month.
The buying power of the Yuga community is $1.1 billion. Right? $1
billion, that is 5x more than the next closest.
So what is it?
Which is huge. Azuki's huge. Yeah.
So, okay, so the next richest community, let's call it, is Azuki. Mm-hmm. And how much buying power do they have?
I think it was like 222 million.
In ETH or
in
across
liquid
everything?
ETH. Yeah, this is just liquid ETH. So you think about like their disposable income as a household or other.
Sure. But I'm saying it's not including the NFTs. It's just talking about the ETH. Yeah. So Azuki holders have 222.
Something around.
I just fucked it up. Whatever it was. You know what I'm saying? Well, 200 million ETH.
And by the way, like the price of ETH affects the TVC and all this stuff. Sure. We're looking at just ETH, and of course, but.
Wow, and then 1.1 billion. Wow. Well, I mean, it has more collections. Like an Azuki you're looking at Azuki and Beans holders or whatever, right? But that is staggering, though.
Yeah.
It's power. I actually read something, I think this morning, that was saying like 35% of all trades in Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year were Yuga assets. Like they accounted for a full like 35% of trade volume, essentially. Right. Again, if you look at everything, all the IP they hold, it's not entirely shocking, but it's
pretty wild.
Staggering.
And it gets even wilder, I think, to me, when you go further downstream and you get into some collections that you're like, is this even relevant anymore? I know they fell on hard times, this, that, the other. They still have a ton of buying power.
So do you have an example?
I don't want to shout out anyone that say, they were falling on hard times. But actually, we've looked at some brand ones too, like some CPG ones. Like so Budver's Heritage Cans, which minted at peak froth, peak hype in November 21, I think it was a $10 million mint, right? So like the overall collection value, I think, is hovering around $1 million. So, okay, the collection itself, not necessarily.
It's down 10x or something from.
The TVC, Budver's Heritage Cans, last I looked last week, I think it was like $42 million. With I think it was 8 million liquid. So, and that's not counting all the stuff they've done Bud Light. And so you think about it in those terms and where these analytics and insights come into play. I think like if you're a brand, if you're a creator, an artist, or just, good old fashioned NFT community, you can sit down with people and map out your roadmap in, like what Gucci did with Yuga, right?
Yep.
For example, we want to empower folks to say, hey, this is the amount of buying power that I'm bringing to the table here with my community. Like, this is real. And they don't have to sell their beloved ape or Azuki or Moonbird to participate in something that we do together. And I've got all the insights to say who are the real influencers. You look at their,
Well, no, sorry, I'm trying to cut you off. I'm just saying you're teeing me up beautifully.
Segue,
yeah, it's like we're mind melded. Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about, Web3Sense. A Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities' token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3Sense has data that you want to see with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. This is one of the most interesting things that y'all can do. And I know it's one of the more complicated things that you do.
Right.
But it is cross-referencing the on-chain data that you're collecting with social media data,
right,
specifically Twitter. Can you speak to what the influence of Twitter or Twitter influencers really is in the NFT ecosystem?
You have to look. So here's what we found. And this is back to our amazing data science team again, right? We did an analysis of crypto dick butts, everybody's favorite collection. It's impossible not to giggle when you talk about it. And we had a client say, hey, you know what? I'm actively in that community. I'm really curious about who's influencing, what. So when we looked at all tweets about the collection, about the community, it was noise. Okay, like there was no meaningful, significant finding or correlation between the tweets about the collection overall and what was going on chain.
So if like crypto dick butts is trending on Twitter, it doesn't actually necessarily mean anything in terms of price going up, or does it mean anything? Does it correlate to price action period?
Yeah, I mean, mainly a lot of it's when we look at sentiment on Twitter, like most of it's positive, right? Like people either kind of pumping something that they're in or they hold, or people just kind of exalting. I don't know,
Proof's getting a lot of negative sentiment these days.
A lot of shade catching strays. I would say this. I think that the crazy, like the most profound finding, that was the first collection we looked at in this regard when we had the capability. When we looked at like Twitter accounts that we knew we could verify held a token in crypto dick butts, tweets that they did, on average, I know I said average isn't good, but on average led to 7 additional transactions on chain, which is a pretty big number. Most of that activity took place in the first day, but the lag was up to 4 days.
So you're saying, so are you saying this was true for any crypto dick butt holder who was tweeting, or you identified
ones that we found?
You identified a few individuals specifically.
Which you do via the ENS, yeah.
Okay. And then that latter part was you identified these individuals where when they tweeted, within 24 hours of that tweet, there were 7 more buys that came through.
Transactions.
Okay, 7 more transactions. Well, transactions has to mean a buyer and a seller, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, but somebody has to sell to buy it, right? But you also that's the fun part of looking at these influencers is like one other thing we've found, right? There's no set rule. It's not like, a zillion followers, low balance equals influencer. You have to have both. Like we've seen some remarkably small followings for people that just have like a very meaningful voice within a community. When they talk, people listen. We're also able to look at like, even though this guy or lady might have a relatively small following on Twitter, we could see who they're connected to, both on Twitter and like who they end up trading with on chain, so to speak. And it's fascinating stuff.
Okay, so I want to break that down a little bit. There's a couple things. Yeah, no. I think this is really interesting, and the implications for this are pretty obvious in the sense that like if you're a brand who wants to enter the space, you want to find out who's actually influential as opposed to who's just loud. And one of the things you just said is like having a big Twitter following doesn't automatically mean you drive price action.
Right.
Like there are people with big followings that drive price action and people with very small followings that drive price action. And you guys are looking at this. Now I want to highlight a couple things. A, you're able to make this connection primarily through ENS domain names. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you'll connect a wallet to a Twitter profile because the Twitter profile uses the ENS domain name, which is a really cool use case, even just for people to think about ENS.
And I think that'll increase over time. I think people will be incented to do so.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay. And then when you talk about, within the first 24 hours of this tweet, there were an average of, I don't know, he had averages 7 transactions that followed from that.
Yes.
And that, if that just happened once, how many times does that pattern have to hold for y'all to say, okay, this is statistically significant. This wasn't just a fluke. This person is actually influencing the behavior of the crypto dick butts buying community or whatever.
Yeah, it's so much of that is tied into the sample of the population that we're examining, right? Okay. And I wish I had a nice cut and dried answer for you, but there's a lot that goes into it.
Okay.
I mean, people way smart. I'm like,
I know I've talked to your data team before and asked them questions. And again, that's where I'm like, cool. By the end, I'm like, I take your word for it. I don't really know what you just said, but it sounded right.
And shout out to Chris. He's, you know him and he's doing like a lot of the heavy lifting there and looking at things, but it's more
than one. You're never just like, it's not just like, hey, this person tweeted and then a bunch of transactions happened, so let's leave it there. Yeah. Right. Like it's a lot more.
Because then, you have to get rid of the outliers. You have to look at what's real.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So back to your point about like, okay, who are the right influencers? What I think we're hoping to see, I think you're already seeing it to a degree, is instead of celebrities getting, huge checks to be an influencer and drive engagement, or I don't think celebrities are going to onboard much of anybody. Onboard is such a, it's on our Web3 bingo card that we're developing, what you hear all the time, right? But I think you're starting to see like authentic enthusiasts in certain categories or spaces or industries get outreach from brands or creators, artists to be their influencers, which is, we want to help be a part of that and drive that.
Yeah.
So if we identify, like a kid that's really into sneakers or a lady that's really into a certain artist, or maybe it could be luxury, it could be any, travel, sports, whatever. Like that's that's the value add to being in Web3 as a wallet holder, right? Mm-hmm. It's outreach from brands, creators, artists that you care about, recognizing your authentic interest in a space and your influence, and then reaching out to you to be part of that.
It was so striking to me. There are people with 5,000 followers. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's somebody with 116.
It's like 116, yeah.
116 followers that was actually driving price action.
Driving activity.
Or was it for doodles?
Yeah, it was, like top 1% influencer. To be fair, like a lot of them had big followings or huge bags. Some of them had small bags, but big Twitter followings. So then you're like, all right, are you really even?
Yeah. Are you full of shit? Yeah. That's interesting.
But yeah.
Maybe the wallet, like I know for me, the wallet that's connected to my ENS is actually not where I keep most of my stuff. I keep stuff in like a ledger and it's separate from my ENS domain wallet. So that's where I can get probably tricky, but.
Well, we could see all the associations of every wallet ever. And whether or not they
This is why this is complicated, because you're trying to figure that shit out too. Yes. Like you want to get to the authentic answer. You're not just going to be like hand wave it and be like, all right, that's good enough.
So back to your original question about like what the robustness of the technology, or what exactly is it doing? That's a huge part of it, right? The transaction history, the associations of wallets and things like that.
Okay, one of the final things I want to talk to you about in terms of, call it services y'all provide or data you're looking at, is network effects and network patterns. This is something that's much easier to understand when you can visualize it. I don't fully get it in either case, but you're going to walk me through it.
Yes.
But we're not going to do it right here. We're actually going to cut to a recording of us so that we can share something on screen. So if you are listening to this on the podcast, we might recommend that you go to the Overpriced JPEGs YouTube so you can watch this section, because we are going to have some visuals, but we'll also try and describe what we're seeing if you are, in the car and have to keep listening. All right, Jim. We are home from Texas and looking at some of the data that y'all at Web3Sense provide around the network behavior of wallets in particular communities, which is a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, no.
But It'll hopefully make more sense as we look at these visualizations. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you may want to switch over to YouTube because there is a visual component to this. Otherwise, we will try our best to describe what's going on as well and keeping it interesting, but it is better visualized. And when I say I hope this will be easier to understand when we go through this, I'm really talking about myself because I still don't fully understand this, and I'm excited to dig into it with you so that I do understand it. The first project that we're looking at here is Azuki, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so for folks who aren't listening, we are looking at it. All of these are going to look to some extent like beehives, like there's little dots everywhere, and there's this really dark cluster of dots in the center, almost in like a tornado shape. So it's like kind of like a cone, and it's very dark. And then it gets increasingly dispersed as you move out. But one thing that's distinct about this is it's got a very dark center. So it's very concentrated in the middle. And I don't know what that means. So Jim, talk us through what we're looking at here.
Sure. So what we're doing here is visualizing wallet behavior. So the members of this community, how they're behaving is all visualized here. And that tornado, that really dark, intense tornado in the center there represents all the different wallets that are trading extremely actively, amongst one another, right? Which is pretty typical for a big blue chip collection like this. And, there's 10,000 tokens in the Azuki collection, right? So there's a lot of supply, there's a lot of interest, and you see that intense trading in the center. But then you do see some interesting patterns as you get a little bit further out from the center. So those whiskers, like those rings you see around the kind of the nucleus of the network, those are like the rare or really expensive Azukis that are not changing hands all that much. And when they do change hands, they're doing it among kind of a select few wallet holders who can afford to do so.
So what does this mean? Like, does this mean there's a lot of trading activity for Azukis and then there's less trading activity for the rare ones? Is that what you're describing?
Yeah. And then if you go outside of those whiskers, you see those little nodes, those little dots that don't really go anywhere. Those are the folks who minted and then just held on with diamond hands, or just put it in, also could put it in their cold storage wallet. So they're not trading at all.
So let's compare this. I want to almost zoom out because I think it's helpful if you can see comparisons. So this is really interesting if you look at Azuki compared to VFriends. So let me give people a description now of VFriends. VFriends, it has the same cluster in the center, but it's much less dark. Like it's not as deep. It's sort of a lighter smattering of things in the center, though again, still darker. But there's much more activity. Like it kind of moves out in concentric circles. And there's a lot of activity at every, call it, part of the ring, as opposed to Azuki, which is very intense in the center and then not very intense as you move out. So help me understand this and maybe even compare it to Azuki in terms of what this looks like when it comes to the trading behavior of these communities.
Well, yeah. So VFriends, it almost looks like you're looking down on the planet Saturn, right? You've got like that really dense nucleus, but like you said, it's not as dense as Azuki, but it's fairly dense among people that were in. I mean, like any collection of this, visibility and popularity is going to trade, right? But there are thousands of nodes kind of forming a donut or a ring around that nucleus, and they're folks that minted and have just held on, right? And that's no other collections diagram really looks like this at all.
Wow. Okay. So anything outside of what we're describing as the nucleus for these, and with Azuki, there's sort of this outer ring here would that form the barrier outside of which it's minters?
So that ring on Azuki is actually like people trading some of the rare, expensive ones, like the really high end ones, and then you've got like that outer pattern. But
I guess I'm asking, is anything outside of this ring a minter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, sorry. That's a good.
So anything. So what we're seeing here with VFriends is everything that's in the equivalent of the outside of the ring thing that we're describing with Azuki. Those are minters, and that's a lot of minters who are still holding.
Yeah. Right. So that's
So there's less trading behavior. In the middle here is trading behavior, and there's less trading behavior because so many people minted and haven't traded. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, right. It makes sense because they want to go to VCon for a few years, or they believe in Gary's long-term vision and the community itself and all the value that they're going to be accruing over time as being part of this collection, this community. So yeah, it's a really interesting diagram. It's one that will point to, like I think I said earlier, like when we're working with brands or creators that are building a community that they want to be, made up of people in it to win it for the long haul. This is what you're striving for in terms of the diagram.
You want your graphs or your whatever, your visual to look like the VFriends visual.
Yeah, you want Saturn. You want the donut.
Okay. All right. I'm really excited for this next one. I'm going to do a little build up. This is Pudgy Penguins, but what you've done is you've looked at the pattern for Pudgy Penguins before Luca took over and after Luca took over.
Right.
So what we're seeing here, okay, Pudgy Penguins before Luca took over is basically just like one big nucleus, which is to say very few people, if any, minted and held. Is that correct?
Sort of, except that there are some of those, see those outer, like, the ones you're pointing to there. So for folks listening, there are, call it a few hundred nodes that exist well outside of that tornado of trading. And those would be the people who minted and were into it, but then bailed, right? So then they got out, presumably as things were getting choppy, and they just like, okay, I thought this was going to work out, but now I'm not so into this project or this community anymore for all the reasons that everyone knows. And then you look to the right of that, right, after Luca Nets, and you'll see it looks a lot more VFriends like. You've got hundreds of nodes of people who bought in after he took over and haven't
sold.
Yeah.
The percent of holders is much higher now. Mm-hmm. And you can see, we'll call this the Luca effect. This lovely donut is the Luca donut. Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, so on this before Luca, I love the BLN, ALN, before Luca Nets, after Luca Nets. The before Luca Nets thing, you're saying there's a couple hundred folks here. I don't know, there's a couple hundred out this far out. It looks like there's hundreds probably within here. Are you saying, what did those folks do? Are you saying those folks? Yeah,
I mean, like, as you get some of those folks like trade in and out, maybe a few times, and then you get the outer ones that just traded once, or and minted and then sold out.
Okay.
And then but it's two totally different stories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. Okay, and then we got to do some of the big guys here. We got to talk about Bored Apes, Punks.
Yeah,
I think those are the two we have. These are interesting. Wow, Punks looks like a dragonfly.
Yeah.
The shape of their cluster. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to zoom back in actually so we can see this better. Okay, so Apes has a very deep center, certainly. But it also has a pretty robust, well, what's interesting about this is, does this mean there's not many people? So each of the nodes, like if I look here at the Luca nodes, these Luca nodes, the Luca donut, those nodes there's a lot of nodes that have never traded.
Right.
What I'm seeing here with Bored Apes is a lot of nodes who have maybe only traded a little bit, who still own, but not that many nodes that have who just like minted and held. Is that right? Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah, you are. Yeah. There's some if you look around the periphery, but you're right.
Because you've got this dark center, so there's some level of like high trading volume happening. But then you have a little bit on the very perimeter of just nodes that have no attachment to the center in any way. But then the vast majority of this is like nodes that still have some tethers to that center nucleus, which is an indication that they've traded before, but it's not dark. Mm-hmm. So it's like some light smattering of trading.
Right.
So actually, I want to go back up. That's really interesting to me. If I go back up to Azuki's, for example, which just has such a denser trading hive in the center. They have both more people who have never traded before, it looks like, than Apes. But then they also have like a denser trading center than Apes, both of which, frankly, kind of surprise me. Is this including beans? Do you know, or is this only the Azuki main collection?
We're Azuki here.
Wow. Yeah. I think of Azuki, what's so interesting is Azuki has been one of the few projects that has really survived Blur, is how I would put it. Blur has incentivized trading, and for a little while I felt like, it was keeping projects propped up. And then it actually felt like it contributed to the slow downslide. Depending on who you ask, I don't know, maybe it wasn't even that slow. The downslide of a lot of projects' floor prices. And Azuki has escaped that in part because it wasn't being farmed as much, I believe. I don't know. I'm just interested to see all of that trading activity among Azuki in that center. Okay, and then let's talk about punks here. I'm going to zoom in again. Oops, zooming out, zooming in. Oh, I can't zoom. Oh, I can. So this now is, I don't even know.
I know there's a lot going on there, right?
What do you think of this one?
Like,
explain punk to me.
It is kind of cool. Like, see those two nodes at the kind of the bottom right? And there's...
So for everybody who's looking, this is the most like triangular of the shapes we've seen. Most of these shapes feel kind of circular. The punks graph, again, it's almost shaped like a dragonfly. Like it has like two wings coming off of its buttocks, as far as I would consider it. And we're looking at the tip of those two wings. Each have these strong node centers. So explain this.
That's just trades going back and forth. And, one might think that might be wash trading.
Okay.
Right.
Where like they're just pinging these two corner nodes, have a lot of activity within themselves. And then it's also, there's this line that just pings back and forth between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So would you say based on these graphs, does punks have the most wash trading happening? Does it appear based on this, or it's hard to say? Obviously, we're talking about wrapped punks in this case.
I think that probably so. Like, I think like we need to probably zoom into some of the other blue chips and see. I'm sure there's some going on there too, but that's what that pattern there would kind of indicate specific wallets trading back and forth with one another, or small groups of wallets trading back and forth with one another on a frequent enough basis to create that line that we saw.
That like mark, you can see it in apes actually too. Like, look at this, you see it there where you've got these cluster of nodes that are clearly trading within each other, and then they're also passing it back and forth. Gosh, that is interesting. I don't know what to do with this, but it's interesting.
But then, if you look like that center cluster analysis to the right of these is like, that's where kind of like, so that's just apes. We're taking that apes network diagram and seeing, like, kind of zooming in and looking at some of these different clusters that have formed around certain influencers, right? So, and it's kind of like, it's interesting to see like little sub communities, right? Or subsets of apes holders kind of trading within a certain neighborhood. And, when we tie it out to folks that are on Twitter, we profile on two of their top 10 influencers here. One's a super obvious one that's got 1.7 million followers and a pretty big bag. Like, that's not too surprising. But then in another neighborhood, so to speak, you've got an influencer that's got way fewer, 2.2 thousand followers on Twitter, but a really big bag, tons of Yuga involvement. And it's just interesting to see like some of these individuals that are having effects and having clusters form around them. And presumably like they brought people into the collection, or also like presumably would have the ability, if they bailed, to maybe, have people listen to that, listen to them bailing on the collection or losing interest, and maybe they would follow suit. So I think this stuff's super interesting to look at, how do these networks form, or how do things kind of get memed or popular, and then who's trading around specific wallet holders.
Yeah. And for folks listening, I'm not even going to try and describe what we're looking at. It's not overly relevant, but it's what Jim just was talking about, which is there's a visualization showing clusters of activity forming around the behavior of certain influencers. So again, you can go check out on YouTube to see this visualization better, but it's more just the fact that you can track this that I think is interesting. Jim, this is awesome. Thank you for sharing it with us. And now back to you and I talking in Texas.
All right.
Okay, so you've laid all this out. I think it's really interesting. A couple questions. I just want folks to understand the business a little bit. You've been mentioning clients. So right now, would you consider yourself a bit of an agency? Are you planning on launching a platform for anybody to be able to use this? What's the plan there? And then I want to get into how you're working with specific clients right now.
So one of the things we do is help you de-risk your mint, right? Because I think like it doesn't get talked about as much as maybe it should be with regard to like, if people want brands to enter the space, or mainstream adoption, all these good terms and concepts, like people have to buy into it, and they have to lead the project, and they need to do it right. Because if you don't do it right, it lives forever on chain. It's a total embarrassment. Like there's a graveyard of failed projects on all these chains, right? So to de-risk the mint and have it go well, you need insights leading. Like there's kind of like a pre, during, and post phase to what we do. The first part is helping you build a community. Okay, so looking at influencers, looking at people who are authentically interested in your space, and getting the right roster of people to reach out to start building that community, that influencer base. So one of our clients is Swagger Society, and Robin Arzone's got
friend of the pod.
Yes, she's been on, really cool project. But with Drew, CEO and husband of Robin, I hope I'm not outing him there. I think people know him pretty well too. But what he was saying was like trying to build a community is like the NFL draft's going on right now, right? Like it's trying to go into the NFL draft without any kind of bios or stats on the players, and you're just picking wildly, right? So what we're helping them do is figure out, people that will like be enthusiastic about Robin, about what she's building. Like she's building a community where you have a really direct connection to her. You've got people, setting goals that they want to reach, but also leaning on the community for support and encouragement. All kinds of really cool things. Which, by the way, one of the many things I like about their project is like she's very much in control of the value add, right? Mm-hmm. So market up, market down doesn't really matter.
It's like Gary Vee in that sense.
Yes.
And I know they're like friendly with Gary, and they really respect what he built. Mm-hmm. And I know that was one of Gary's goals launching VeeFriends, was like, I want other, for lack of a better term, celebrities, right, who can give access to themselves in a way that would be valuable to people to see what they can do with NFTs beyond just like cash grabs. So yeah, that's interesting.
In that network diagram of VeeFriends, we have all these people that minted and are holding on to it because of the utility, the multi-year vision and benefits. Yeah. That's what I point to with folks who are trying to build something of lasting value. I say, hey, look, that's what you want your network to kind of form like. And
so how can you give us any specifics on like, okay, you say you're helping Swagger Society build their community and finding folks who are going to be invested in Robin, and like, how do you find that in on-chain data?
Sure. No, you first of all, it's like, okay, everybody would love to have a mix of Web3
and Web2 participants that you're, what's the word? Onboarding.
Yes. And we do that. Like we're helping some of our clients like point to wallets that are of a young age, right? Like the wallet was presumably created in anticipation of this mint to join this project. Of course, an OG degen could, do the same. I mean, anybody can make a wallet, but close enough. I think like you're starting to see a certain proportion of wallets that have been around for a long time, and then some that are new. But looking at older wallets or people that are in the space, which is another
bingo term.
When you're thinking about that, like you can look at communities that people think are analogous or have a lot of crossover, appeal or interest, things that resonate. So you might look at, VeeFriends or World of Women or, Boss Beauties or other types like for this particular collection, like, members of these communities might also very much like to be part of Swagger Society.
And so one of the things you might be looking at is, holder, believer, like you're looking at the persona. Mm-hmm. You want to, I'm sure, find folks who are holders or believers in those communities as opposed to like a flipper in that community, because at that point, who knows who that is? And then is the other piece of this, you're looking at that for that influencer behavior as well, like who are folks who actually have led to price action in a World of Women kind of community, because
people who are listened to,
yeah,
it leads to on-chain activity, right?
That's interesting. Yeah. And does every community have that? Like, have you started to do the digging on this for Swagger Society and found, World of Women and Boss Beauties and Women and Weapons, like, and all of these communities do have.
Every member of those communities has a dominant behavior associated with their activity in that collection. Yeah, community. It's pretty cool.
Wild.
Yeah.
Taking a step back, like, what is the vision of where NFTs you think will be or can be or should be in the next few years that would, I don't know, make Web3Sense super imperative, or just what is that future vision for you of both the market and then Web3Sense as a business?
Yeah. So back to the idea that blockchain improves so many things that we're already doing. I think NFTs are data, right? There was a woman, Genevieve Lavelle, who I saw in a webinar last year, who she's like, look, NFTs are not what people necessarily think they are looking at, from the outside in. They're data. So I think the example she gave was like, the EU is looking to import wood from South America. how do you prove that this is not, Amazon rainforest wood that was cut down? You need, provenance, you need proof of custody and proof of ownership, right? Like, I think it's a requirement now to import and cert.
Yes.
So, you just think about all the different ways NFTs can improve things we're already doing. Like Gary Vee always said, like, hey, when you buy something, you're not going to get a receipt, soon enough you'll get an NFT. And you're just thinking about like all the different use cases of NFTs in so many different industries. It could be events, like you talked with them Shadows about all the cool things that they're doing. That's what gets us excited. The vision is you need insights to really take full advantage of the technology and to connect with the right members of your community. We are not in the business of trying to like tie in PII with, there's a lot of projects I think they're like, ooh, if we could only join the Web2 data it's like that. People should be able to control how much or how little they want to expose or present to retailers, brands, agencies, what have you. So
everything you're looking at can preserve a person's anonymity.
Yeah. I mean, I want to have a high stakes wallet where I keep like stuff I really care about long term, and then have a nice low stakes wallet. But I want to go into a retailer, pay for something using a stable coin or crypto, get issued a digital twin with the shoes, coat, whatever I bought, and then that's it. They don't know who I am, but they don't care because they have a zero party relationship with me, whereby they know I'm holding the token and they can reach me maybe via my wallet. I want them to. It's not spam. If a brand I really like, or artist or creator, manufacturer, whatever. Really, it could be a loyal, like, look at all these loyalty programs. Like, this is where it's all going, right? Like, instead of having an app that tracks your location, all that stuff, like you have a loyalty program that's on chain. And like, my friends have told me to buy things that they love, and then I do, and I send the code and they get some merch or they get a refund or whatever. That should be all be on chain, right? Like, if you tell me to go buy something and then I tell my friends, like, it all should kind of flow up to you. And then like, oh, Carly, or, whatever .eth you want to present to that brand or, that community, that's what they're tracking, right? Which is cool. Like, that's how it ought to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, where my head goes with all this, because we spent a lot of today obviously talking about the Web3 brands, the Yugas and Doodles and VeeFriends and all the rest of it. But when I think about brands, not that those aren't real brands, but like Web2 brands, and thinking, I've talked on the show at various points about, and we talked about this a lot with Starbucks and Forum 3, and the cool thing of like, if Dunkin' Donuts knows who are Starbucks loyal customers because they can see it on chain because those people are getting NFTs, and then Dunkin's trying to vampire attack them and lure them away by giving them discounts to Dunkin', and Starbucks is going, great, because you shop at Dunkin', or because you shop at Starbucks, Dunkin's giving you discounts. Like, look how rewarded you get for being a customer of Starbucks. So like, when I think about that future for brand marketing, this becomes really, really interesting, because you're thinking about Nike going, oh, wow, we didn't realize we actually had high overlap with Blue Spoon coffee. Like, what if it turned out, what I mean? That a lot of folks, and now Nike's like, well, we should absolutely do a collaboration with Bluestone. Or, oh my gosh, there's this random kind of like indie singer that it turns out there's like a bizarrely statistically significant correlation with, who also love Nike. This is probably not what comes out, but you'll end up probably seeing things like that when you can start digging into the data on these token profiles. And I think that's really,
it's cool.
Going to just change marketing. For brands.
When you had Andy and Adam on from Forum 3 talking about that, like, that was one thing that stuck out. Like, the benefit of the token holder, it's beneficial if Dunkin' reaches out to you and offers you some free stuff. Okay. So you're grateful to Starbucks when that happens. You might also be grateful to Dunkin'. You might like them both. But when you think about, like, so they're adding value to, and you pointed this out, like ownership to, ownership of the token, gamification, making it fun to be a Starbucks community member. But also Starbucks will now have, they will own that community, own the data, and be able to look for all these cool insights about exactly what you're saying, what resonates. That's where our wall of contents analysis comes in. Like, okay, wait a second. Like you said, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You're so polite that you stop when I give you the look. But I was just giving you the look because you said they can own the data, and I just want to make the very important point but they're not owning your email address. They're not owning your name even. They're owning the fact that you've bought from them or bought from these other people, which is actually the piece of the data that you want them to have. And not like, I'm not opposed to companies profiting. I like companies and they need to make money, right? But like, it's not even necessarily on their part, like knowing who their holders are is not necessarily saleable because it's on chain, so anybody can find it, right? So it is it's putting a lot more of the power back into you as the purchaser and the individual as opposed to them. Sorry, please do continue what you were saying, but I wanted to make that point.
Okay, but then so everyone uses Taylor Swift as the example. But I know you love her. So what if Starbucks says, oh my gosh, we have a lot of Taylor Swift token holders in our community, right? Maybe we should, do something with Taylor Swift. What if we look at all these different POAPs and we see there's a certain geographic triangulation maybe we do local activations, getting back to Notre Dame. What if there's a bunch of, we think Notre Dame should be issuing tokens, right? In various ways and forms. So, what if they start saying, wow, there's a lot of Notre Dame fans in our community. We should do something with Notre Dame or something in South Bend, some sort of local activation that would benefit the token holders and make them even more passionate and enthusiastic about being part of our community, right?
Yep. Okay, so for folks who are very interested in this, you obviously work with clients. If I'm just an individual, who should reach out to you and what's the best way to go about this? And the answer is it's in the show notes, but say your piece.
But it's a great question because this can go a lot of different ways. And we are engaging with a lot of different people, like agencies that are helping brands enter the space. They're using us all the time. They're saying, okay, we have to nail this project. I want the pre-mint analytics to build the right community. I want to take a look at the mint who participated. They might want us to help positively screen in certain types of wallets, screen out the bots or the flippers maybe. Then you do the mint analysis, who participated. Then you do how many were onboarded versus already in the community. And then you do all of the important things afterwards to make sure that you have good measurable metrics and insights about how that community is doing. Mm-hmm. That's crucial, right? You need for a CMO to really buy into something or a CEO to buy into something, he or she needs to believe that it's going to be measurable. It's not some vanity project or something they're doing out of FOMO to look cool. That it's going to have some measurability to it. So we're working with any stakeholders that need to measure their communities. But some of our clients are, we work with artists or photographers or people that, and when we're working with them, just full disclosure, I like engaging with them on a very low cost, sometimes free basis to just help them kind of get started or understand their community better. And then, I'm hoping they think I'm cool, and then maybe I get
they'll recommend somebody in the future
or tweet. You'll
trade for a tweet. That's funny. So I think the important piece here is that y'all are in some ways still in discovery mode. I mean, you have all of this data, you have all this insights, you have so many different ways you can use it. Mm-hmm. So you're interested in just connecting with anybody who has a community, is interested in this, and so you're let's schedule a call. Let's just have a conversation and we can build out these bespoke arrangements and these bespoke deals depending on the client to get yourself started. And then you can start to almost formalize things and standardize things a little bit more as you go along and you start to see the patterns of who's engaging with you.
Exactly.
Is that right?
It's a great way to phrase it because we have a lot that's economies of scale that, is a benefit of our platform. It's crucial for scaling, but then there's a lot of customizability that we can do for our clients or empower them to customize it. We do white label and API solutions too for an agency. Maybe they want a portal. Mm-hmm. They want their clients to associate it with their agency. Cool. I don't ever have to be part of that relationship. Yeah. Just take our white label solution or API feed and, go nuts.
Wow. Okay, awesome. So folks, if you're interested in this, in the show notes, because Web3Sense is a sponsor of OPJ, which we are so grateful to. So they're in our sponsor links. So the first thing you'll look at if you go to the show notes, you'll be able to see it'll say Web3Sense. I think it's overpricedjpegs.cc/Web3Sense. That'll take you to a Google form that you can fill out. Basic. It's just basic info.
Quick, I promise.
Quick and easy basic info. If you submit that, you'll hear back from Web3Sense to schedule a call to have a conversation. And then, or you can just go to Web3Sense.ai. Okay.
Right.
So, or go to the website, Web3Sense.ai, and you can contact them through that as well.
And we've heard from people from all corners of the globe through OPJ.
It's
got global reach.
It's so fun. Yeah. I've been hearing from the conversations he's been having. We have a very global community here at Overpriced JPEGs, which is
and people who love you in your show, and they think it's really awesome. So
I'm gonna cry. Yeah. I've turned into Oprah. This is now it's the Oprah show, and everyone cries when they come on. Well, Jim, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure working with your team. As I mentioned, we won't make you cry again. And we'll keep talking. I mean, we use your insights all the time, so we'll have you and your team back on at various points.
And we're just getting started, and we love. I had a really cool call today with somebody who's just longer tenured or more creative in NFTs than I am, and just we're onboarding ideas and insights of others to make our stuff more valuable. And there's still a long way to go in terms of like taking this out to the full vision. Like we're starting here. We'll be getting into supply chain analytics. We'll be getting into tokenization of assets, all the insights that will be taking place. But we're very, very excited about all the things that are going on here. And I think that even though you're starting to see maybe a little bit more sparse attendance at some of these NFT conferences and get-togethers, there's still like just huge enthusiasm, huge passion, more pragmatism, and I think a better long-term future.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks so much for being
Carly.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.